The 25th floor apartment of Aryan Sharma was a shrine to modernity and solitude. It was 2:17 a.m. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city of Mumbai pulsed with a million restless lights, but inside only the soft, cool blue glow of 3 screens kept the darkness at bay. Aryan, 25 and dressed in a comfortable gray t-shirt, was debugging a complex line of code on his primary monitor. He preferred the silent, late hours for work. They were predictable, logical, and safe. His whole life was built around logic. He finally solved the bug, a minor victory that brought a small, satisfied sigh. He leaned back in his chair, reaching for his holographic smartphone. That's when it happened. His phone, a sleek black monolith, suddenly went haywire. The display didn't just glitch, it seemed to shiver. The text became not just scrambled but momentarily replaced by alien glyphs, symbols that looked like a jagged, burning calligraphy. A low, harmonic hum vibrated through the glass of the screen, echoing slightly in the silent room. Aryan's programmer's brain immediately categorized it. Critical system failure. Hardware/software conflict. Whoa, what the hell? He mumbled, his focus instantly snatched away from his code. He shook the phone, but the internal vibration continued. The foreign glyphs dissolved, the screen flashed black, and then, a single plain text message appeared. It was simple, perfectly centered, and glowing with an impossible ethereal blue light. Your alien wife has arrived. Aryan froze. His logical world splintered. This wasn't a virus. This was a bad joke. A hack. But how did they bypass the deep-level encryption? He checked the sender. The sender ID was just a string of digital noise. A slow, incredulous laugh escaped him. Very funny, Deepesh, he muttered, assuming it was his friend playing a sophisticated prank. He was about to type a furious, all-caps reply when a different sound, a sound that should not exist, drew his attention. It was a soft, high-pitched fizzing, the sound of energy coalescing like the static charge of a massive forgotten machine powering on. Aryan slowly lowered his phone, his eyes drawn past the periphery of his apartment, to the large window overlooking the glittering cityscape. Through the glass, or perhaps just inside the glass, the air was shimmering. It wasn't the heat haze of the city. It was a digital, cold shimmer filled with floating, electric blue particles like cosmic dust. These particles were rapidly condensing, pulling together like iron filings to a magnet. He stared, his jaw slackening. His programmer's mind screamed for a logical explanation, a projector, a reflection, a prank, but his gut was already ice. The space where the air shimmered began to define itself. A form was taking shape. It began with a blinding, silver-blue outline. The light was volumetric, cutting through the dim apartment air in sharp, geometric rays. Then the form was complete. Standing less than 3 feet behind him, yet seemingly projected from the very fabric of space, was a woman. She was otherworldly. Her skin was a mesmerizing, almost translucent silver blue, perfectly smooth and unmarked. Her hair, the color of a faint nebula, flowed past her shoulders, seemingly weightless. Her eyes were large, luminous, and glowed with a pure white-blue light, a light that seemed to see not just him but the core of his atomic structure. She wore a futuristic, armored attire that was more like a second skin, woven with intricate, glowing cyan lines that pulsed with a slow, bioluminescent rhythm. She was stunning in a way that defied human aesthetics, a perfect symmetry of energy and grace. She was also 7 feet tall and radiating an aura that made the apartment feel instantly cold. Aryan's grip tightened on his phone, which, almost as if sensing her arrival, displayed the message one last time: "Your alien wife has arrived." He couldn't speak. All his quick wit, his logical defenses, his programming knowledge, it all vanished. He was a simple, terrified human pinned by an impossible apparition. The woman, Ethel, finally moved. Her white-blue eyes scanned the room, observing the simple human dwelling with a clinical, detached curiosity. Her lips, the faintest shade of lilac, parted, and a voice that sounded like chimes echoing in deep space, spoke in perfect, unaccented English. Aryan Sharma of Sector Earth, 01. I confirm transmission receipt. The union contract has been activated. She paused, her eyes locking onto his terrified face. I am Ethel. And per the terms of your contract, I believe this is where I state, I am home. Aryan finally managed to exhale a choked, single syllable. No. Ethel tilted her head, a gesture that was both elegant and completely alien. The refusal protocol is not permitted under Article Delta 9. You may review the contract terms. I believe they were digitally transferred to your phone during the arrival sequence. He instinctively looked down at his phone. The glowing text message had vanished. In its place, a small new document icon sat on his home screen. It was titled, Union Contract Sharma V1.0. Aryan felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't a prank. This was real. His apartment, his safe, logical sanctuary, had just become the meeting point for an interstellar matrimonial catastrophe. And somehow, an involuntary document download had just sealed his fate to an ethereal, 7-foot-tall alien who claimed to be his wife. Contract terms? He finally shouted, his voice cracking. I never signed a contract. I was just debugging code. Ethel's expression remained blank, but her eyes held a spark of something that might have been confusion. A contract is binding, Sharma. You were selected. We must now proceed with the integration phase. She gestured to the phone in his hand with a luminous finger. Now please delete the Angry Cat app. It is a severe waste of processing power and is non-conducive to our mission parameters. Aryan looked at his phone, then at his alien wife, and back at the city lights. His world had not just glitched, it had been permanently overwritten. Aryan Sharma stood rooted to the spot, the chill radiating from Ethel seeming to bypass his skin and settle directly into his bones. His mind, usually a fortress of code and logic, was currently a battlefield of denial and panic. Listen, Ethel. He started, forcing his voice to remain steady. He was talking to a hallucination, a very sophisticated projector, or perhaps an entity that had just materialized in his living room. He tried to rationalize it. This is a misunderstanding. I don't know what union contract you're talking about. I'm a software developer. I debug code, I don't sign cosmic marriage papers. Ethel regarded him with those luminous, startlingly white-blue eyes. She was unnervingly still, her presence dominating the modern apartment space. The holographic particles that had accompanied her arrival still gently pulsed in the air around her, refracting the faint city lights. Your biological identifier, Sharma, Ethel stated, her voice the echoing chime of a distant star, was flagged by the galactic repository. The contract was signed long ago by your direct genetic predecessor. The terms are inherited. Your refusal protocol is invalid. Aryan felt a dizzying headache forming. Genetic predecessor? Are you talking about my great-great-grandfather? What did he sign? A mortgage on the Milky Way. The document explains it with precise legal clarity, Ethel said, making no move to comfort or explain further. Her gaze was now fixed on his holographic phone screen, which still displayed the small, glowing icon. Union_contract_Sharma_V1.0. Access the file. The integration phase cannot proceed until you acknowledge the terms of my dwelling and your obligations. Defeated by the sheer impossibility of the situation, Aryan took a trembling breath and tapped the glowing icon. The document didn't open in a standard PDF reader. Instead, the phone projected a three-dimensional rotating field of alien text above the display. Ethel pointed a shimmering finger at the field, and the text instantly translated, flashing across Aryan's phone screen in crisp, legible English. Galactic Union Contract. Earth Designation E01. Preamble. This covenant establishes a temporary codependent relationship between the designated Lyran emissary, Ethel, and the registered Earth host, Aryan Sharma, for the duration of 1 terrestrial cycle, 10 standard Earth years. Article 1. The designation of wife. The Lyran emissary is to be publicly and privately referred to by the host as wife, to facilitate covert integration and ensure societal non-detection. This term does not imply traditional biological reproductive obligations unless otherwise mandated by Lyran Council Decree L. 7. Article 2. Host obligation. The haven. The host must provide a secure, undetected residential unit, SURU. The host's current apartment is provisionally accepted. The emissary requires a daily minimum of 4 hours of access to the residential power grid for system recharge and energy cohesion. Article 3. The Veil of Secrecy Concealment Protocol. The host is strictly forbidden from disclosing the emissary's true nature to any third-party terrestrial entity. Violation of this article will result in the immediate and irreversible deactivation of the host's communication devices, and potential memory calibration. Article 4. Sustenance and Acquisition. The emissary has zero requirement for terrestrial nutritional intake. However, the host is obligated to acquire and maintain items deemed culturally necessary by the emissary to maintain the wife designation. Initial acquisition mandate: a terrestrial garment known as a sari, and 1 large container of spicy red pepper flakes. Article 5. Termination. The contract is non-negotiable and terminates automatically upon the successful completion of the emissary's primary mission, or upon the host's voluntary agreement to a memory calibration protocol, voluntary waiver of sanity. Arian read the list twice, his eyes darting between the surreal text and the ethereal being standing a few feet away. 4 hours of electricity? He croaked. You're going to use my apartment as a giant phone charger for 10 years? And what is a memory calibration protocol? Ethel stepped closer, the soft hum of her energy intensifying. Her voice dropped, sounding less like music and more like a quiet command. The memory calibration protocol involves the total erasure of all data relating to the Lyran presence from your cortical pathways. It is unpleasant. It is, however, the only way out of the contract. Arian swallowed hard. Translation: either you play along or I wipe your memory. Okay. Okay, fine, he stammered, running a hand through his dark hair. I accept the terms. Provisionally. But I need to know something. Why me? Why an ordinary guy in a rent-controlled 25th floor apartment? The selection process is complex, Sharma, Ethel replied, the light in her eyes flickering almost imperceptibly as she processed the data in the room. The Sharma genetic line possesses a unique low-frequency signature that makes this specific residential unit difficult for our pursuers to track. You are not a choice. You are a necessity. As she spoke the word pursuers, the lights in the apartment flickered violently. The digital glitches that had marked her arrival suddenly intensified around the edges of the window, forming brief, jagged patterns of black and green static. Ethel turned sharply towards the window, her body tensing. The energy signature is fluctuating. The concealment matrix is unstable. We must proceed with integration immediately. She held out her hand to him. It was a perfect, elegant human hand, yet it glowed. The first step of the integration phase, terrestrial disguise. Arian stared at her hand. Disguise? Oh. You're 7 feet tall and glowing like a deep-sea fish. I am a being of pure energy in this form, Sharma. I can compress. It requires a physical stabilizer, she explained impatiently. Her luminous gaze fell upon a stack of discarded laundry on his armchair. The item you refer to as a sweatshirt will suffice. Before Arian could protest, Ethel took a deliberate step toward the armchair. As she passed the digital static near the window, her shimmering form seemed to flicker and shrink. The blue light around her intensified for a moment, then rapidly receded, drawing inward like water down a drain. In the span of 2 seconds, the 7-foot-tall, ethereal warrior collapsed her energy form. Where Ethel had stood, there was now a woman of approximately 5 feet 6 inches, dressed in the exact clothing she had materialized in, but with a crucial difference. She no longer glowed. She was still incredibly beautiful, with her silvery blue skin now looking like an exotic, striking dye, and her luminous eyes dimmed to a startling pale gray. She looked like a supermodel from a high-concept sci-fi photoshoot. The only problem? Her disguise was absolutely transparent to human eyes. Arian stared right through her chest to the wall behind. Ethel. You're invisible, he whispered in horror. A temporary error, she replied, her voice now a smooth human alto. Energy cohesion is difficult after interdimensional travel. I require the stabilizer. She grabbed the nearest garment, Arian's old, faded blue university sweatshirt, and pulled it over her head with a fluid, unnatural speed. The moment the cotton fabric touched her skin, her form solidified. The invisibility vanished. She was completely physically present. The silvery blue skin now looked like a captivating human complexion, her features softened. She looked like a human woman. A terrifyingly perfect human woman wearing an oversized, grubby hoodie. She looked at Arian, her pale gray eyes holding a mix of satisfaction and distant amusement. Integration, complete. Now, host Arian Sharma, the acquisition of the spicy red pepper flakes commences. You are driving. Arian looked at the clock, 2:35 a.m. He had an alien wife who was demanding late-night grocery shopping under the threat of brainwipe. Fine, he sighed, pulling on his shoes. But if the neighbors see me with you, I'm saying we just had a really intense cosplay party. The absurdity of the situation finally hit him, and a nervous, hysterical laugh escaped him as he headed for the door, with his unearthly, stunning and now slightly shorter wife silently following him into the city night. The adventure had truly begun. The neon glow of a 24/7 convenience store cut through the pre-dawn gloom, painting the deserted street in garish greens and reds. Arian Sharma pulled his worn sedan into an empty spot, casting a sidelong glance at Ethel in the passenger seat. She was still wearing his oversized, faded university sweatshirt, its blue fabric contrasting oddly with her startlingly beautiful silvery blue skin. Her pale gray eyes, once luminous, now observed the human world with an intense, almost clinical curiosity. She truly looked human now, albeit a human of striking, almost unnatural beauty. "Remember the rules, Ethel," Arian whispered, turning off the ignition. "No glowing. No talking about galaxies or contracts. And try not to look like you're dissecting everything with your eyes. Just blend in. You're my cousin from out of town." He internally cringed at the lie. "Cousin? Really, Arian?" "I comprehend the concealment protocol, Sharma," Ethel replied, her human-like voice retaining its ethereal quality, a subtle echo of the deep space chimes. "However, my visual processors are designed for multispectral analysis. This environment presents many data points of interest." She pointed a delicate finger at a flickering street lamp. "For instance, the inefficient photon emission of that archaic lighting unit. Its energy signature suggests a high rate of material decay." Arian sighed. "Just don't mention it to the cashier." They entered the store. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a harsh glare on shelves stocked with colorful processed foods. A lone, weary-looking cashier was wiping down the counter, his gaze barely lifting as they walked in. "All right, spicy red pepper flakes," Arian muttered, navigating the aisles. Where would they even be? The culturally necessary section? Ethel walked beside him, her movements fluid and graceful, almost gliding. But her focus wasn't on the shelves. It was on the other customers. A young couple holding hands picked out snacks. A delivery driver bought a coffee. Ethel's eyes scanned each of them, her head tilting slightly. "Observe, Sharma," she said, her voice low. "The pair bonding rituals of your species. The exchange of high-fructose corn syrup products. The ingestion of heated stimulant beverages. All statistically inefficient for survival." "It's called dating, Ethel, and coffee," Arian corrected, trying to keep his voice down. He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. This was going to be harder than debugging his most complex code. They finally found the spice aisle. Arian quickly grabbed a large container of chili flakes, tossing it into their small basket. "Okay, mission accomplished. Let's get out of here." But Ethel was no longer by his side. She was standing in front of a shelf filled with brightly colored children's toys. Her pale fingers gently traced the plastic body of a doll. "This object," she said, her voice tinged with an unreadable curiosity, "it simulates a juvenile human female. What is its functional purpose?" Arian hurried over, trying to subtly guide her away. "It's a toy, Ethel. Kids play with it." "Play?" Her brow furrowed, a delicate crease forming between her eyes. "An activity devoid of strategic or reproductive value. Why is it necessary to simulate this play behavior with a non-sentient artifact?" Just then, a small child, no older than 5, toddled around the corner, her eyes wide with wonder as she spotted Ethel. "Mommy, look. An angel," the little girl exclaimed, pointing at Ethel with a sticky finger. Ethel looked down at the child, her expression unreadable. "My designation is Ethel. I am not a celestial entity." The child's mother, a tired-looking woman, quickly scooped up her daughter. "Oh, she just meant your beautiful, hair. Come on, sweetie." She shot Arian an apologetic, bewildered glance before hurrying away. Arian grabbed Ethel's arm, pulling her towards the cashier. "See? That's why we need to blend in. They think you're an angel or a weirdo. Stick to the script, cousin." At the checkout, the cashier, a young man named Rahul, finally looked up. His eyes widened slightly as he saw Ethel. He blinked, cleared his throat, and then slowly scanned the chili flakes. "Just this?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but his gaze kept darting back to Ethel. "Yes," Arian said quickly, trying to act normal. "Just a late-night craving for spice. My, cousin loves spicy food." Rahul nodded slowly, a small, knowing smirk forming on his lips. "Right. Cousin. She's from out of town, huh?" Ethel, sensing the human scrutiny, suddenly spoke. "Your analysis of the social interaction indicates a discrepancy between verbal communication and internal neurological signals. He suspects deception, Sharma." Arian almost choked. "Ethel. No." Rahul's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion. What did she just say?" Arian forced a laugh. "She's, learning English. From a dialect program. She says, your scanning efficiency is commendable, young human." "Yeah, that's it." Rahul stared at Ethel, then at Arian, then back at Ethel. He clearly didn't buy it. He quickly finished the transaction, his hands fumbling slightly. As they left the store, Arian felt a surge of relief. That was a disaster, Ethel. You can't just analyze people's neurological signals and blurt it out. It is a factual observation, Sharma, Ethel countered calmly as they got back into the car. Your species values deception as a social lubricant. This is a fascinating data point. Arian started the car, pulling back onto the street. It's called being polite, Ethel. And sometimes, it's called trying not to reveal that I'm living with an alien who thinks chili flakes are a culturally necessary item. He glanced at her. Her expression was still serene, almost otherworldly, but a hint of something flickered in her pale gray eyes, a very subtle glint of amusement, perhaps? Or was it just his imagination, projecting human emotions onto a being from another galaxy? He suddenly remembered something. Wait, what was that about my low-frequency signature, being hard for your pursuers to track? You didn't mention that in the contract. Ethel turned her head, looking at him directly. The faint blue glow from his dashboard cast eerie shadows on her perfect face. The contract outlines your obligations, Host Sharma. Not the emissary's mission parameters or inherent risks. My presence here is not without reason. There are factions that seek to prevent my mission. They may attempt to retrieve me. Or you. Arian's blood ran cold. He had worried about nosy neighbors and awkward conversations. He hadn't worried about alien bounty hunters. His life had just gone from boring to bizarre to potentially deadly in a single night. Retrieve me? He whispered, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. What do they want with me? Ethel's gaze shifted to the road ahead, her voice returning to its distant, chime-like quality. You are intrinsically linked to my presence here, Sharma. If they cannot retrieve me, they will attempt to deactivate you. It will be easier. Arian drove in silence, the chili flakes heavy in the bag on the passenger seat. The city lights, which had once seemed comforting, now felt like a target. His quiet, predictable life had been annihilated. He had an alien wife, a strange contract, and now alien enemies. He just hoped his old apartment had good insurance. The pale light of morning filtered into Arian Sharma's apartment, illuminating the strange duality of his life. On one side, his meticulously organized workspace. On the other, Ethel, now sitting cross-legged on his pristine leather sofa, quietly consuming the local power grid. She had stripped down to the basic luminous bodysuit she wore beneath the hoodie, attaching a thin, glowing cable, which had materialized from her wrist, to the nearest wall socket. A low, constant hum filled the air, and the digital clock on his microwave flickered erratically. Ethel, please tell me that charging process isn't going to blow the apartment complex's circuits, Arian muttered, quickly making coffee. He was already 30 minutes late for his usual schedule. The energy draw is minimal, Sharma. It is a highly efficient conversion, Ethel replied, not looking away from the wall. Her skin was once again shimmering faintly with a soft blue light as she absorbed the energy. However, I have completed the analysis of the union contract. Article 2 states your obligation to provide a secure, undetected residential unit, Suru. This unit is demonstrably insecure. Arian choked on his coffee. Insecure? What? Did you check the deadbolt? No. It's the constant surveillance, she stated flatly. Your phone receives thousands of uninvited intrusions daily. Your life is an open-source network of data for various human agencies. I recommend immediate data deletion and protocol reset. That's just targeted advertising, Ethel, and I need that phone for work, Arian argued, exasperated. Speaking of work, I have a job. A real one. I have to leave. You need to stay here, look inconspicuous, and do not talk to anyone. Ethel finally disconnected her wrist cable, the blue light fading from her body, restoring her human-like appearance in the oversized hoodie. I have assessed your job, Data. You write simulated reality instructions for a financial algorithm. It is a non-critical task. My attendance is required. No, absolutely not, Arian exclaimed. My office is the one place I have to be completely normal. You cannot come to my office. What if you glitch? What if someone sees your silver skin? My disguise integrity is at 98.7%, Ethel assured him, standing up. The contract requires the host to maintain proximity to the emissary during the initial integration phase. Furthermore, I need to observe human hierarchies for mission parameters. Arian knew arguing was futile and potentially dangerous. Memory calibration. He threw his hands up in defeat. Fine. But you are, Aisha, a shy, non-English-speaking intern from my international team, and you don't touch anything. Arian's tech office, Synapse Dynamics, was the epicenter of predictable human activity. It was a brightly lit, glass-walled space designed for maximum transparency. As Arian nervously led Ethel, or Aisha, to a spare desk in a quiet corner, every single person turned to look. Not because of Ethel's behavior, but because of her impossible, striking beauty. "Aisha is joining us for a few days," Arian announced, his voice sounding too high. "She's new to the city." Ethel sat down at the desk. Her fingers immediately found the keyboard, but instead of typing, her pale eyes focused on the fluorescent light fixture above her. "The flicker rate suggests imminent component failure within 72 hours, Ethel stated clearly. Arian quickly stepped on her foot. "Aisha means she's shy, remember? She's just admiring the ceiling." For the next 2 hours, Ethel was silent, observing. She didn't try to code, but her gaze swept over the dozens of monitors, seemingly absorbing the data streams. Suddenly Ethel stiffened. Her eyes, usually pale gray, flashed for a microsecond with a familiar white-blue light, a subtle internal glitch. "Sharma," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the office drone. "The low-frequency signature is being breached. A terrestrial entity is attempting to track my energy residue. Highly localized." Arian looked around nervously. "What are you talking about? Is it my boss coming to ask about the Q3 report?" "Negative. It is a professional surveillance protocol," Ethel hissed. She leaned in, her exotic perfume, which smelled faintly of ozone and rain, hitting him. "They are using a low-yield energy dampener. It is an agency-level tracking tool. We are compromised." Just as Ethel finished speaking, a tall, impeccably dressed man in a dark suit walked into the middle of the open-plan office. He didn't look like a coder, he looked like a government agent. He walked with military precision and carried a sleek, black briefcase that hummed faintly. He stopped in the center of the office, his cold eyes scanning the occupants, his gaze lingering for a fraction of a second on Arian's corner. "Good morning," the man announced in a sharp, authoritative voice that cut through the silence. "I am Agent Viren, here on behalf of the Directorate of Global Security, DGS. We are conducting a mandatory routine inspection of your company's server logs for compliance." Arian's stomach dropped. The Directorate of Global Security. This wasn't targeted advertising. This was a government agency, and Ethel had called it a professional surveillance protocol. Agent Viren walked slowly toward Arian's desk cluster. As he passed, the fluorescent light Ethel had analyzed moments ago flickered, buzzed violently, and died, plunging a small section of the office into shadow. Viren didn't flinch. He stopped directly in front of Arian's desk. "Mr. Sharma," Agent Viren said, his eyes drilling into Arian. "I understand you recently had a rather significant power surge at your residence last night, around 2:30 a.m. A localized spike of unusual energy." Arian felt Ethel's presence harden beside him. He desperately needed to know what she was doing. "A power surge?" No, sir," Arian stammered, trying to sound innocent. "Must have been a neighbor. I was, asleep. Just me. Alone." Ethel slowly reached out her hand and, with startling speed and precision, tapped the keyboard of the computer right next to her. The computer was connected to the central DGS surveillance portal Agent Viren was accessing. Accessing DGS portal. Compromise in 3, 2, Ethel whispered in a low tone that only Arian could hear. Suddenly, the screen on Agent Viren's portable device, the one connected to the humming briefcase, flashed bright red. A cacophony of digital static and alarm sirens erupted from the small device, drowning out the office noise. "What the?" Viren instinctively recoiled, grabbing his device. Ethel pulled her hand back, her face utterly placid. "Mission parameter achieved. Data stream pollution complete. They will be blind for 180 seconds. Arian stared at her, then at the frantic Agent Viren, who was yelling into a comms device. "Mr. Sharma, this is highly irregular." "Who is this, in turn?" Agent Viren demanded, pointing a finger at Ethel, his eyes full of suspicion. She's very good with computers." Arian squeaked. "She just, fixed your virus." Ethel stood up and gave Agent Viren a flawless, if utterly artificial human smile. "I apologize for the technical inefficiency of your tracking system, Agent Viren," she said, her voice smooth and confident. "Perhaps the Directorate should invest in better encryption protocols. It is a glaring vulnerability." The agent's face went white with fury and shock. "No one talked to the Directorate like that. We need to leave Sharma. Now," Ethel commanded quietly, already walking towards the exit. "The 180 seconds are passing." Arian grabbed his laptop bag, muttered a hurried, "Emergency leave," to his boss and sprinted out of the office, trailing his unearthly wife who had just single-handedly hacked a government security agency on her first day as an intern. His peaceful life was officially over. Aryan Sharma's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He didn't run, he flew. The laptop bag slapped against his side as he sprinted out of the Synapse Dynamics building, Ethel gliding effortlessly beside him, her face unnervingly calm. "Slow down, Sharma. Your kinetic output is grossly inefficient for your current velocity," Ethel advised, her gaze already scanning the street for surveillance points. "I'm running, Ethel. That guy was the directorate. You just hacked a secret government agency. My life is over. I'm going to end up in a black site reading about technical inefficiencies." Arian gasped, pulling her into his sedan. He tore out of the parking lot, weaving through the traffic. The initial panic was slowly replaced by a surging adrenaline-fueled focus. "The DGS has a comprehensive network of terrestrial surveillance," Ethel stated, attaching a minuscule, almost invisible disc to his dashboard. It instantly merged with the plastic. "This device will pollute their localized tracking feed for approximately 2 hours. After that, this vehicle is compromised." 2 hours? "Great," Arian muttered, glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see sleek black helicopters descending. "We can't go back to the apartment. It's the first place they'll look. We need a secure location, Ethel, somewhere they won't expect." Ethel turned to him, her pale gray eyes intense. "The temporary habitat is secondary. We must prioritize contract fulfillment. Article 4 is pending, acquisition of the Sari." Arian nearly swerved into a food stall. "Are you serious? We are literally running from the secret police, and you want to go Sari shopping?" "The Sari is a required cultural stabilizer for the integration phase," Ethel explained, her tone non-negotiable. "Its traditional design and complex weaving pattern offer subtle energy modulation benefits which will enhance the concealment protocol. Furthermore, it is culturally necessary to support my designation." Defeated by the alien logic, Arian slammed his fist on the wheel. "Fine. Sorry, shopping under duress. Only in my life." He drove to the oldest, busiest part of the city, a chaotic, multi-level market known for its textile shops. The density of the crowd and the sheer electronic noise of the area would be the best natural camouflage. The moment they stepped into the narrow, crowded lanes of the market, Arian felt overwhelmed. The air was thick with the scent of spices and incense, and the noise was a cacophony of vendors shouting and shoppers bargaining. Ethel, however, seemed to thrive. Her human disguise held perfectly, but her senses were on overdrive. She moved through the crowd with an unnerving grace, effortlessly avoiding collisions. They entered a brightly lit textile shop overflowing with fabrics. The vendor, a portly man named Mr. Patel, looked at Ethel and his eyes widened with appreciation. "Ah, Sahab. For the beautiful Sahab, only the best," Mr. Patel announced, pulling out bolts of shimmering silk. "I require a garment that minimizes heat signature reflection and maximizes kinetic adaptability," Ethel stated to the stunned vendor. Arian quickly intervened, forcing a loud laugh. "She means, a nice, cool fabric. She burns up easily, you know? Heat issues. She's very sensitive." Mr. Patel, though bewildered, focused on the task, showing off various materials. Ethel rejected them all with single, precise observations: too reflective, high chemical dye retention, suboptimal drape geometry. Finally, she stopped in front of a simple, heavy dark cobalt blue silk. It was elegant and understated, with a border of delicate silver thread work. She didn't touch it. She just stared. "This one, Sharma. The weave contains trace elements of metallic fiber, an excellent natural dampener. And the color is visually non-intrusive." "It's beautiful, Ethel," Arian admitted, feeling a strange surge of pride. He paid quickly, eager to leave before the 2-hour clock ran out. As they were leaving the shop, Ethel suddenly stopped. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on a seemingly random man across the street who was making a phone call, partially hidden behind a fruit cart. "Energy residue detection," Ethel whispered urgently. "That individual. He carries the faint ionization trace of the dampener used by Agent Viren. He is a low-level tracker. The 2-hour pollution protocol is failing." "He followed us?" Arian's mind screamed. He looked at the man. He was looking at his phone, but his body language was all wrong, too stiff, too focused. "We cannot return to the car. We must vanish into the subterranean network," Ethel commanded. She grabbed Arian's arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and pulled him towards a barely visible, steep stairwell leading down into the city's underground metro system. They rushed through the crowded metro station, Arian's panic rising with every passing second. Once they were 2 stops away, Ethel finally directed him out of the station. "We need a location devoid of traceable digital signatures. A place of low human traffic but with access to the energy grid," Ethel assessed quickly, her eyes scanning the dilapidated buildings of an old industrial sector. Arian suddenly remembered something from his childhood. "I know a place. My friend Vikram's family owned an old, empty warehouse. It's abandoned but the main power line is still live from the outside for the streetlights." They found the warehouse, a massive, silent, dusty tomb of concrete and corrugated iron. Arian picked the rusty lock and they slipped inside. The warehouse was enormous, dark and utterly silent. The only light came from the narrow gaps in the roof. Arian collapsed onto a dusty stack of old packing material. He was shaking not just from the run, but from the sheer terror and magnitude of his new reality. He had been tracked, chased, and was now hiding in an abandoned building with an alien being. "We are temporarily secure, Host Sharma," Ethel stated, standing tall in the dusty darkness. She had already shed the blue hoodie. "Secure?" Arian laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Ethel, they know my name, my job, and now they know I'm sorry shopping with a beautiful, silver-skinned woman. This is insane." Ethel walked over to a high-voltage box on the wall, completely unfazed. She pulled the luminous cable from her wrist and attached it to the exposed wiring, bypassing the main breaker. As the energy flowed into her, the cobalt blue sari she had just acquired unfolded itself from the plastic wrapping she held. It seemed to float on its own, then gracefully draped itself around her body. The silver threadwork on the fabric began to pulse faintly, harmonizing with the subtle blue light now emanating from her skin. It was an incredible sight. The beautiful, traditional human garment instantly transformed into a powerful, shimmering second skin of energy and silk, perfectly melding the ancient and the alien. Ethel, standing in the heart of the abandoned warehouse, draped in the glowing sari, looked like a true deity, a Lyran goddess charging her core. She looked at Arian, her eyes glowing with pure power. "The sari stabilizer is online. The integration phase is progressing successfully, Sharma. And you survived your first hostile encounter." She paused, and a small, almost undetectable change came over her expression. "Now we rest. And tomorrow we calculate the next move." Arian stared at her, the reality hitting him harder than before. He wasn't just hiding, he was protecting something powerful and vital. He was not just a coder anymore, he was a host and he was in the fight of his life. The morning in the old warehouse was cold, dusty and strangely silent. Arian Sharma woke up on the stack of old packing foam, shivering. Across the vast, cavernous space, Ethel stood perfectly still, draped in the dark cobalt sari. She was no longer glowing, having finished her charging, but the fabric retained a faint, subtle shimmer in the weak sunlight. Arian sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Good morning, wife," he mumbled, the words still tasting foreign and absurd on his tongue. Ethel turned, her pale eyes meeting his. "Greetings, Host Sharma. I have been calculating the probability of successful evasion over the next 72 hours. Probability remains at 48%, due to your species' reliance on networked communication infrastructure. So, less than a coin flip." "Fantastic," Arian sighed, getting up. He needed coffee, a shower, and a solid plan that didn't involve hiding in a derelict building forever. "Look, we need to talk logistics. The contract says you don't need terrestrial nutritional intake. But I do. We need food, water, and something to cover your amazing, glowing silk sari. The sari is an energy modulator, Sharma. Covering it would reduce its effectiveness by 12%, Ethel informed him, walking towards him with her characteristic, unearthly grace. "However, I have been analyzing your sleeping state. I recorded a high volume of emotional fluctuation during your REM cycle. Your stress levels are spiking." Arian scoffed. "You were watching me sleep? And yes, I'm stressed. I have a price on my head and my current address is condemned. The data suggests your anxiety is linked to human pair bonding expectations," Ethel continued, completely ignoring his outburst. "Specifically, you exhibited signs of discomfort regarding the wife designation. Explain the terrestrial emotional requirement for love in this context." Arian stared at her. Her question was clinical, yet deeply personal. It was an alien trying to understand the most illogical of human emotions. "Love isn't a requirement, Ethel, it's complicated. It's a chemical cocktail, societal pressure and deep, often irrational, connection," he explained, simplifying desperately. In our case, the wife designation means nothing but a cover story. You don't love me and I certainly don't love you. Ethel's eyes narrowed slightly, processing the information. Understood. The union contract prioritizes mutual survival over emotional bonding. I will restrict emotional analysis during non-critical phases. Good. Now survival. Food, Arian said, changing the subject abruptly. He pulled out his wallet. I have some cash. I'll make a quick trip to a different part of the city. You need to stay here. And I need a list of things you need, other than the sari and the chili flakes. Ethel pondered this. I require a stable interface for information absorption without using the power grid. Something called a book. Specifically, a comprehensive index of terrestrial history and military strategies. A history book. Got it. Anything else? A large quantity of salt, she added. Salt? Why salt? The atomic structure of sodium chloride allows for minor energy focusing when dispersed. Useful for micro-concealment, Ethel replied as if requesting a bottle of ketchup. Arian wrote down, food, water, history book, lots of salt. Once Arian left, locking the warehouse door behind him, Ethel moved to the center of the vast space. She gently touched the metallic wall with one finger. A faint blue glow emanated from her touch, and she began to absorb the residual vibrations of the city, the distant sounds, the electronic hums, the thermal signatures. She was not resting. She was analyzing the human element. Observation log, host Arian Sharma. Profile, logical but driven by high emotional volatility, fear, frustration, and underlying loyalty. Inefficient but predictable. Ethel projected a small holographic schematic of the DGS tracker's frequency that she had disabled yesterday. The Directorate, she calculated, would be using highly advanced Lyran-derived counter-tracking technology acquired through black market channels. Her mission was compromised from the moment of arrival, which meant the threat was far greater than she anticipated. Her own civilization, the Lyra, was facing extinction. Her mission was to plant a Lyran beacon, a device hidden deep within her energy core, in a location shielded by Earth's unique magnetic field, a task requiring a 10-year acclimatization process via the Union contract. The DGS knew something about the Lyra, perhaps they knew exactly what she carried. Ethel's gaze fell on a worn, forgotten object on a nearby crate, a dusty leather-bound photograph album. She picked it up. Inside were images of Arian as a child, with two older, smiling humans, his parents. They were exhibiting the complex emotions Arian had called love. Ethel touched the image of Arian's mother smiling at him. The expression was not logical. It was a release of neurotransmitters, yes, but it served no immediate purpose. She watched the still image, her consciousness absorbing the concept of a bond based on pure, protective irrationality. It was a biological vulnerability, yet, she observed, it was also the reason Arian hadn't abandoned her yet. A fascinating anomaly, Ethel concluded. I must maintain the facade of wife, to exploit this emotional inertia. Just then, the faint high-pitched chirp of a tracking pulse hit the outer wall of the warehouse. Ethel instantly solidified her energy field, the silk sari stiffening momentarily. The director was back. And they were using a much more aggressive signal. They were not looking for energy residue this time, they were looking for a void, the silence where her pollution protocol had blocked the digital chatter. They were closing in on the absence. Arian returned 30 minutes later, his arms loaded with bottled water, bread, a large bag of salt, and a thick, dense volume titled Military Campaigns of the 20th Century. He found Ethel by the door, already dressed in his blue hoodie over the sari, her eyes narrowed in warning. They are here, Sharma, she stated, her voice sharp. They have changed their tracking methodology. They are looking for the absence of data. My initial signal pollution is now a beacon. What? They're looking for the quiet spot. Arian panicked, dropping the groceries. How do they know where to look? They are using Lyran tech, Sharma. They are intelligent adversaries. You must now act as the distraction protocol, Ethel said, pulling the thick history book from the bag. Distraction? How? Ethel opened the book to a random page. Her luminous fingers passed over the text, absorbing the complex battle strategy of a mid-century war. You will exit immediately and drive the car several kilometers away. You must use your phone to generate maximum digital noise, calls, social media, data uploads. You must convince them that the signal is not here. You must become the loudest signal in the city. Arian hesitated. And you? What are you going to do? Ethel picked up the bag of salt and tossed it over her shoulder. The salt crystals dispersed, shimmering faintly in the light. I will deploy a minor salt-based energy dispersal field and use this warehouse as a temporary decoy. I will meet you at the Central Library Data Exchange Point in 2 hours. Go. Arian looked at the ethereal woman, now armed with a history book and a bag of salt. He knew he was the expendable distraction, the pawn in her galactic game. Yet, the thought of leaving her, this fascinating, impossible woman, to face the Directorate alone felt wrong. It was that irrational loyalty she had observed. "Be careful, Ethel," he whispered before turning and sprinting towards the only escape route he had, the chaos of the city. Ethel watched him go, then turned to face the heavy warehouse door. Her lips curled slightly, the closest her Lyran biology would allow to a human smile. "Host Sharma," she murmured to herself, holding the heavy book like a shield. "Your species is inefficient, yet surprisingly brave." She raised her hand, and the shimmering blue light of the sari intensified. The door was about to burst open. The roar of the sedan engine was the loudest sound Arian Sharma had ever made. He drove frantically through the congested lanes of the industrial area, his eyes glued to the rearview mirror. He was the distraction protocol, and he knew any mistake would lead to immediate capture, or worse. His holographic phone was burning hot in the cup holder. He had followed Ethel's instructions meticulously. 5 simultaneous video calls to random contacts, a massive data dump of old, encrypted code to an obsolete cloud server, and non-stop location updates on every social media platform he had. He was a digital storm, designed to drown out Ethel's silence. If they're looking for the absence of data, I'm giving them a tsunami of useless information, Arian thought, a grim satisfaction mixing with his terror. Suddenly, a sleek, black, unmarked utility vehicle, the kind that screamed government agency, swerved dangerously close behind him. It wasn't the large sedan Agent Viren had used, but a smaller, faster pursuit model. "They've taken the bait," Arian muttered, flooring the accelerator. The chase was frantic. Arian, fueled by panic and instinct, drove like a man possessed, taking sharp turns and dodging traffic. He was a coder, not a stunt driver, but the image of Ethel's cold warning, "They will attempt to deactivate you. It will be easier," was a powerful motivator. He finally lost them in a massive, chaotic junction near the port. He pulled over to a hidden alleyway, breathing heavily, his hands slick with sweat. He checked his watch. He had 20 minutes until the rendezvous point, the Central Library Data Exchange Point. Arian arrived at the Central Library, a beautiful, sprawling colonial-era building that housed millions of physical books and a massive, archaic digital archive center. He was a programmer. This was his terrain. He located Ethel near the back entrance. She was leaning against the stone wall, looking perfectly composed, the cobalt sari visible only as a hint of shimmering color beneath the simple, worn hoodie. She held the thick military history book. "You are late, Sharma," Ethel stated without preamble. "I was being chased, Ethel, by men in black cars. Your distraction protocol was a near-death experience," Arian hissed, trying to catch his breath. "The protocol was successful. Their primary focus remains on the electromagnetic signature of the vehicle. We must now proceed with the data acquisition phase." She held up the history book. "This volume contains extensive strategies on resource denial and covert operational logistics. I need to feed its data into a stable, public network to run my counter-calculations against the DGS threat model." "You want to scan a physical book into the library's public server?" Arian asked incredulously. "Ethel, that is a library rule violation, not a galaxy rule. The necessity outweighs the infraction, Sharma. The DGS will eventually realize the digital noise is irrelevant. We require a tactical advantage." They slipped into the deserted reference section. The data exchange point was a cluster of old public access terminals. Arian logged into the least-used terminal. "We have about 10 minutes before the DGS realizes I've gone silent and tracks the last known strong signal, this building." Ethel immediately got to work. She placed the massive history book flat on the scanner bed. Instead of using the slow-moving glass scanner, Ethel extended a hair-thin thread of pure blue light from her fingertip. The thread gently touched the first page, and the entire text instantly shimmered and vanished. "What did you just do?" Arian whispered, watching the paper become dull after the light passed over it. "I utilized a Lyran photonic scanner to absorb the data instantaneously," Ethel explained, typing rapid, complex algorithms into the terminal. She wasn't typing on the keyboard. Her fingers were moving above the keys, manipulating the air itself. "The data is now being run through the Lyran mission core within my energy field. I am correlating human military failures with DGS movements. The terminal screen began to fill with cryptic, flowing code that Aryan only half understood. It was far beyond human programming. It was a pure language of mathematics and physics. Suddenly, the overhead lights in the library flickered and dimmed. The low, pervasive hum that Aryan now associated with specialized surveillance technology began to vibrate through the floor. "They are here," Ethel stated, her eyes not leaving the screen. "They are attempting a localized power surge to detect my energy signature. It is a crude but effective tactic." Crude and effective is DGS's specialty. Aryan grabbed her arm. "Ethel, let's go." "Negative. I require 30 more seconds for the final calculation. You must disrupt their frequency." Aryan looked around desperately. He saw the server closet door, clearly labeled restricted access. He knew that if he could overload their local communication bandwidth, he could buy them time. "Hold on," he yelled. He dashed to the closet door. It was locked with a simple human-grade electronic lock. "Need to break the lock," he muttered. He pulled a specialized small diagnostic tool from his laptop bag, a device he used for hardware testing. He jammed it into the lock mechanism. His hands worked purely on muscle memory, bypassing the lock not with force but with code. Click. The door sprang open. Aryan dove inside. The closet was small, hot, and humming with network devices. He located the central communication router, a complex web of blinking lights. He didn't know the password, but he didn't need it. He connected his phone, still on those simultaneous video calls, to the router's direct input port. He then launched every single network-intensive app he had. Streaming services, massive software updates, and every game patch in his storage. He was flooding the local network with an overwhelming torrent of useless data. Digital chaos. The effect was instantaneous. Back at the terminal, the alien script on Ethel's screen glitched violently, then instantly cleared. "Sufficient, Sharma. The calculation is complete," Ethel said, pulling the photonic thread back into her fingertip. She stood up, the hoodie pulled tightly over the shimmering sari. Aryan rushed out of the closet just as the main doors of the library burst open. Agent Viren, flanked by 2 uniformed security guards who clearly belonged to the Directorate, marched in. "Freeze. DGS. We have located the energy anomaly." Viren roared, pointing a sleek, non-terrestrial-looking device straight at Aryan and Ethel. Ethel did not panic. She looked calmly at the device, then at Aryan. "The calculation is conclusive, Sharma," she stated, speaking loud enough for Viren to hear. "The Lyran beacon within my core requires a 5-step activation sequence. The first step requires isolation from human surveillance for 7 standard days." She looked directly at Agent Viren, her pale eyes flashing. "Agent Viren, your pursuit methodology is predicated on the assumption that I am trying to hide. I'm not. I merely needed you to push me to a location with sufficient network speed to run my counter-protocol. You're coming with us, emissary?" Viren barked, gesturing to his men. Ethel took a step back, her voice dropping to a low, powerful frequency that seemed to vibrate the very shelves of books. "Your tracking efforts have now led me to the final strategic weakness of the Directorate. Thank you for your cooperation." Ethel grabbed Aryan's hand and pulled him toward a side door, kicking it open. They didn't run. They simply vanished into the next layer of the city's vast, chaotic network, leaving Agent Viren staring at the empty space where the alien woman and her bewildered human husband had stood moments before. Aryan Sharma found himself being pulled through a maze of narrow service tunnels and back alleys that ran beneath the central library. Ethel's grip on his hand was firm, and her energy field, concealed beneath the hoodie and sari, felt like a silent, invisible shield pushing the mundane world aside. They finally emerged near a deserted railway yard. Ethel stopped, releasing his hand. "Isolation phase initiated, Sharma," she stated, her voice returning to its calm, analytical tone. "We require a location with minimal electromagnetic interference and a secure, non-networked power source. My counter-protocol analysis dictates a 7-day period of absolute terrestrial disengagement." 7 days? What happens in 7 days? Aryan asked, still breathing heavily. The sheer impossibility of his situation was starting to wear him down. The Lyran beacon will activate its first stage. This requires low-frequency synchronization with Earth's magnetic core, which must be calibrated in complete isolation, Ethel explained. If the Directorate disrupts this process, the beacon will fail and my mission will terminate, possibly with catastrophic localized results. Aryan processed this. "So, if they find us, the Earth might get a really bad case of, what, galactic indigestion?" Ethel gave him a look that conveyed both annoyance and clinical confirmation. In essence, yes. Now, focus on the immediate objective, the secure location. Arian looked around the sprawling, dusty rail yard. Rusting tracks, dilapidated freight cars and silent, heavy machinery. It was industrial decay, a perfect blind spot. I know this yard, Arian murmured, his programmer's mind kicking back into gear. They have a couple of old sleeper cabins here, the kind used by the railway crew decades ago. They're basically reinforced steel boxes. No plumbing, no Wi-Fi, but they are practically Faraday cages. Within 30 minutes they found the cabin. It was a small, grimy metal box, barely big enough for 2 people and a few crates. It was hot, claustrophobic and utterly devoid of any modern comfort. This unit is structurally robust, Ethel assessed, running her luminous fingers over the cold steel wall. The steel structure provides excellent shielding against external terrestrial signals. Acceptable. This will be our Suru for 7 days. Once inside, the first thing Ethel did was reconnect her wrist cable to an exposed power junction hidden behind the cabin. The soft blue hum of her charging field returned, a strange counterpoint to the city's distant drone. Arian sat down on the floor, resting his back against the wall. He was exhausted. So, 7 days of absolute silence. What do we do? Ethel finally took off the hoodie, revealing the subtle shimmering of the cobalt sari. She looked down at him. You will be responsible for maintaining the illusion of absence. You will only leave for necessary resource acquisition. I, in turn, will focus on beacon synchronization and host education. Host education? The union contract requires that the host attains a basic understanding of Lyran's social and political structures to better assist the emissary during the integration period, Ethel explained, her eyes distant as she accessed internal data. You will now be educated on the Lyran-DGS conflict. The Lyran conflict. For the next few hours, Ethel lectured Arian. It was a bizarre classroom setting. An alien goddess in a steel box, teaching a terrified human about interstellar politics. The Lyra, a highly advanced civilization focused on pure energy and data-based evolution. They valued efficiency above all else. The Cataclysm. Their home world was destroyed centuries ago by a neighboring rival species, forcing the Lyra into a nomadic energy-based existence across the galaxy. The beacon, a Lyran device that, once fully activated, would tap into Earth's magnetic field to create a permanent, self-sustaining energy refuge, a final sanctuary for the remaining Lyran consciousness. The Directorate's involvement, the DGS, Ethel revealed, were not just a domestic security agency. They were a shadowy, hyper-funded organization run by a cabal who had somehow acquired Lyran prototype technology decades ago. They knew the beacon existed and they wanted it. They want to capture the beacon and weaponize its energy refuge capabilities, Ethel concluded, her voice devoid of emotion, yet the weight of her species' fate hung heavy in the stale air. They are pursuing us because I am the vessel for the Lyran future. So, they want to steal your baby? That's a power source, Arian summarized grimly. The analogy is crude but accurate, Sharma. And you, Ethel fixed him with a stare, are the essential shield. They are less likely to risk destroying the beacon if they believe a local high-profile target is attached to it. I'm the human shield, Arian whispered, the truth sinking in. His panic was replaced by a slow, creeping dread. The test of silence. The next 2 days blurred into a monotonous cycle of silence, charging and cryptic Lyran lessons. Arian only left the cabin twice, traveling miles out of the way for basic supplies, always wearing different clothes and avoiding his usual haunts. On the 3rd night, the atmosphere in the cabin changed. The air felt heavy, almost pressurized. Ethel was deep in her synchronization cycle. Her body was rigid, and the sari glowed with a continuous, intense blue light. Suddenly, a massive, grinding noise echoed through the rail yard. It wasn't a train, it was heavy machinery getting closer. Arian froze. He scrambled to the cabin's tiny, grimy window and peered out. He saw 2 large modified DGS trucks, dark, armored vehicles with massive, complex antennae on top, slowly moving through the rail yard. They weren't looking for him. They were moving in a pattern. Ethel. They're sweeping the area. They're running a magnetic field scan. Arian whispered urgently, backing away from the window. Ethel's eyes remained closed, but her lips moved faintly. Interference detected. They are using a Lyran-derived low-frequency emitter to disrupt the beacon synchronization. They know the general area. Can they see us? The steel is protecting us from direct visual and thermal scans, but their emitter is designed to detect the Lyran frequency signature I am currently emitting, Ethel stated, her voice tight with strain. If they get closer than 50 meters, the synchronization will destabilize and the beacon will fail. The trucks were closing in, moving slowly and methodically, their massive antennae humming ominously. They were less than 100 meters away. Arian looked around the tiny metal box. He was the only line of defense, a simple coder against advanced alien technology. He saw the large bag of salt he had bought, sitting in the corner. He remembered Ethel's words. The atomic structure of sodium chloride allows for minor energy focusing when dispersed. It was a crazy, desperate idea, a human trick against an alien machine. Ethel, I'm going to disrupt their signal. Don't move. Arian hissed. He grabbed the large bag of salt, forced open the cabin door just a crack, and using all his strength, emptied the entire bag onto the tracks just outside the cabin, scattering the white crystals in a wide, rough circle. He then grabbed a long, rusty metal pipe and quickly used it to scrape the salt directly onto the steel rails and earth ground around the cabin. He was creating a hasty, crude electrolytic barrier. He retreated back into the cabin just as one of the massive DGS trucks rumbled past, its antenna sweeping right over their location. As the truck passed over the salt-covered tracks, the massive antenna on its roof flickered violently. A sharp, electric snap echoed in the cabin, and the hum of the truck's emitter died for a terrifying moment. The truck stopped dead. Arian held his breath. He heard muffled voices and the slam of a truck door. They were sending men to investigate the sudden power surge. Sharma, your action has caused a momentary frequency inversion, Ethel breathed out, her eyes still closed, a look of focused pain on her face. It bought us 90 seconds. They will now disembark and search the area on foot. They were trapped. And the 7 days of isolation had just begun. The air inside the steel cabin was thick with tension and the faint scent of ozone. Outside, the heavy rhythmic thud of military-grade boots echoed on the gravel. Arian Sharma pressed himself against the cold metal wall, his breath held tight. He could hear the muffled, sharp commands of Agent Viren. The DGS had stopped searching the broader rail yard. They were now methodically focusing on the area where their magnetic emitter had glitched, right over the patch of salt and the steel cabin. Ethel, they're right outside. They're going to try to cut the power or worse use a thermal lance, Arian whispered, his voice trembling. Ethel's body was rigid. The faint blue glow of the sari had intensified to a dazzling white, and her eyes were squeezed shut in deep concentration. Silence, Sharma, Ethel commanded, the word a painful, strained hiss. The beacon is at 52% synchronization. Any further energy disruption will fracture the core. The salt inversion bought us time, but it only created a localized blind spot. They will soon realize the anomaly is contained within this steel shell. Arian peered through the grimy window crack. He saw Agent Viren and 2 DGS security personnel flanking the cabin. Viren held a device that looked like a sleek, metallic stethoscope. He was pressing it against the steel wall, listening. We have a lock on the frequency absorption, Agent Viren, one of the men reported in a harsh whisper. It's stable now, but it's contained. Whatever the emissary is doing, it's behind this wall. The steel is acting as a cage. Viren's cold voice cut through the air. I want a thermal breach team on standby. If the emissary doesn't respond in 60 seconds, we crack the shell and extract the target. Arian Sharma. We know you're in there. Surrender the emissary now, and your involvement will be re-evaluated. Arian knew Viren wasn't bluffing. 60 seconds. He had to disrupt the breach before it started. He frantically scanned the tiny cabin. His gaze fell on his only remaining asset, his holographic phone. It was useless for Wi-Fi, but the cellular antenna was still trying to connect, emitting a desperate, tiny signal. Digital noise. Flood the network, Ethel had taught him. The greatest defense against them is digital chaos. He fumbled in his bag and found the small, specialized diagnostic tool he had used to hack the library lock. It was designed to send massive, useless bursts of electromagnetic data through specific frequencies to test hardware integrity. He switched the tool to its maximum output, focused on the civilian emergency band, and quickly clamped it onto the steel wall, right above Ethel's head. The moment the tool activated, it began to scream, not with sound but with an intense, localized burst of electromagnetic noise. The cabin wall vibrated fiercely. Outside the cabin, the effect was immediate. The metallic stethoscope in Agent Viren's hand shrieked with a high-pitched whine. Viren clutched his ear, stumbling back. Interference. He's using an unsanctioned frequency jammer. It's polluting our comms. Get that power cut now. Viren roared, pointing at the external junction box where Ethel was drawing power. One of the guards rushed to the junction box, preparing to cut the main line. Inside, Ethel's eyes fluttered open. The effort to maintain synchronization through the interference was agonizing. Her breath came out as a strained sound, a soft, high-pitched whirring. Sharma. You are generating too much localized heat. The beacon. It is overheating. Ethel gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Arian realized his mistake. The tool wasn't just disrupting the DGS, it was overwhelming Ethel's sensitive energy core. He had traded immediate capture for potential self-destruction. He reached for the tool to shut it off, but Ethel's glowing hand shot out and clamped onto his wrist, stopping him. No. Keep the jammer active, she whispered, her voice strained and commanding. It is the only way to slow them down. I must use this noise to hide the whisper. Ethel closed her eyes again, pushing past the pain. The white glow around her intensified until the air felt scorching. She was pushing her synchronization faster than its safe limit, using the surrounding noise and the steel cage not just as a shield, but as an amplifier. The energy radiating from her became so powerful that it generated a physical heat wave that hit Arian. He shielded his face, looking at the being who was literally burning with power. She was not just integrating the beacon, she was forcing a communication. Her voice, usually clear and resonant, became a single pervasive thought in Arian's mind, a nonverbal, pure stream of data and emotion. Arian. They believe my focus is the Earth's core. It is not. My mission is to send the core data to a receiving matrix. The matrix is you. The realization hit Arian with the force of an electric shock. Meh. Your unique low-frequency signature. Your mind is the only terrestrial entity the DGS cannot detect. I must transfer the initial beacon seed data to your consciousness. You are the living buffer. Before Arian could even process the terror of having alien software uploaded into his brain, the outside door of the cabin began to groan and bend inwards under the pressure of a hydraulic ram. Breaching. Move out. Viren shouted. Ethel let out a silent, internal scream of pure energy. Her body flared once, brilliantly white. The diagnostic tool Arian had clamped onto the wall blew a fuse with a loud pop, plunging the cabin into relative darkness. At that exact moment, Arian felt a shocking, agonizing coldness spread through his mind. A stream of highly ordered data, complex beyond human comprehension, forcing its way into his thoughts. He gasped, falling to his knees, his head throbbing with 1,000 new impossible equations. He looked up just as the steel door buckled inward. Standing in the broken doorway was Agent Viren, gun drawn, looking triumphant. But Viren wasn't looking at Arian. His eyes were fixed on Ethel. Ethel was sitting against the wall, her energy glow completely gone. The sari was dull, gray and lifeless. She looked like a beautiful but exhausted human woman. She looked powerless. Capture her. She's offline. Viren commanded, stepping over the crumpled metal. Ethel met Viren's eyes. She spoke, her voice clear and strong without the usual ethereal chime. Too late, Agent Viren. The first phase is complete. The beacon seed is deployed. She gestured with a weary hand towards Arian, who was still cradling his aching head. You may terminate the vessel, but you cannot retrieve the data. It is now safely shielded by human chaos and complexity. Viren hesitated, his triumphant expression faltering as he looked at Arian. A simple, shivering coder, now the most powerful hard drive in the galaxy. The deadlock was complete. They had found the vessel, but the data was already protected by the human variable. Agent Viren stood in the doorway, framed by the dust and the twisted metal of the breached cabin door. His dark suit was immaculate, but his face was a mask of cold fury. He was looking at Ethel, who was now motionless, drained of all her ethereal power. The beacon seed is deployed, Viren repeated, his voice low and dangerous. A desperate, last-resort maneuver. You chose a low-frequency biological entity as the host? How inefficient. Arian, still on his knees, felt the sheer volume of alien data assaulting his mind. It wasn't just code, it was a sensory explosion, sights of distant galaxies, the cold logic of Lyran mathematics and a profound aching sense of loss. He clamped his hands over his ears, trying to filter out the noise that was only inside his head. It is shielded, Viren, Ethel said, her voice now flat and slightly weak, lacking its usual chime. Your scanners can detect the energy vessel, but they cannot penetrate the chaos of the human mind. The data is safe. For now. Viren ignored Ethel and took a step toward Arian. Mr. Sharma. The data is a weapon, a key to interdimensional power. We can extract it, voluntarily or otherwise. Surrender the Lyran data. Arian tried to speak, but only a choked gasp escaped. He didn't know how to surrender the data. It was just there, a sudden, immense, and completely unintelligible operating system running in the background of his consciousness. Suddenly Ethel moved. It was a small, sharp movement, but her hand shot out and grasped Viren's ankle with surprising speed. "You will not touch him," Ethel commanded, her pale gray eyes focusing with an intense, raw anger that felt more human than alien. "The host is under Union protection." Viren yanked his foot away, startled. He leveled his weapon at Ethel. "The Union contract is irrelevant on this planet, emissary. You are now a prisoner. We will take both of you. You the vessel and him the temporary buffer." Just as Viren was about to give the order, a sudden blinding flash of light erupted from a completely unexpected source. The abandoned DGS surveillance truck parked less than 50 meters away. The truck's massive antennae began to spark violently, and a series of high-pitched electronic alarms began to wail. "What is that?" Viren shouted, momentarily distracted. From the truck, a voice, loud and panicked, blared over a faulty external speaker. "Sir, we have massive system contamination. It's the civilian frequencies. Someone is attacking the core network. Total data stream pollution." Arian looked at Ethel. She shook her head. "Not my doing. My energy is depleted." Arian's mind raced. Someone was attacking the DGS network now? Oh. He had created the initial chaos, but this was a professional-level attack. He remembered his friend Deepesh, the tech prankster he had initially suspected of the alien wife, text. Deepesh was an absolute menace with code and loved nothing more than taking down systems he deemed too arrogant. Arian had initiated 5 simultaneous high-intensity video calls to Deepesh before the chase. It wasn't a coincidence. Deepesh, detecting a massive government system trying to track his calls, had decided to launch a counterattack for fun. Human chaos. Viren slammed his fist against the cabin wall. The civilian noise. It's reacting to the beacon transfer. Retrieve the targets. But the sudden, massive electronic noise had bought the 2 guards just enough time to panic. As they moved to grab Arian, Ethel acted. She didn't use force. She used the environment. She used the large bag of salt which Arian had spilled near the door. With a tiny, almost undetectable push of her residual energy, she propelled a cloud of the fine salt dust directly into the faces of the 2 guards. The salt, energized by the powerful electromagnetic activity from the DGS truck, hit their faces and temporarily overloaded their vision and comms. They cried out, their hands flying up to their eyes. "Now Sharma. Run." Ethel pushed Arian with surprising force, sending him tumbling out of the cabin and into the rail yard. Arian ran. He didn't look back at Ethel, who was still trapped in the cabin with a furious Agent Viren. He knew his only chance to save her was to survive and protect the data in his head. He ran towards the thicket of trees at the edge of the yard, the beacon seed burning a hole in his consciousness. The sudden, complex data was making him physically ill. He felt vertigo, nausea, and the horrifying sense that his brain was splitting in two. He finally collapsed behind a rusted freight car, gasping for air. "I have to hide. I have to process this." He pulled out his phone. Its screen was displaying the same frantic, incomprehensible code that was now in his head. The code wasn't running on his phone. His phone was simply displaying the output of his mind. Ethel's voice, the stream of pure thought, entered his consciousness again, weak but urgent. "Listen, Host Sharma. The data is only stable if it is translated. You must convert the Lyran code into a simple, human-understandable format. Find a safe terminal and write it down. You are the only link." "Write it down?" Arian mentally screamed back, clutching his head. "It's 1,000 gigabytes of physics. I'm a front-end developer, not a cosmic translator. You are the buffer. Translate the essence. The next step requires a physical, historical location, a place of great human history designed for permanence. The code will tell you where. Go, Sharma. I will buy you time. Find the monument of permanence." The connection snapped. Arian was alone. He looked back towards the cabin. The sound of shouting and shattering glass confirmed that the DGS had finally captured Ethel. But they hadn't captured the mission. That was now inside him. Arian, powered by the terrifying weight of his new responsibility and the frantic digital pulse in his brain, forced himself to stand up. He was no longer just running. He was on a mission dictated by alien data and a frantic half-processed coordinate. He was the living buffer, and his wife, the alien goddess, was now his hostage. He had to save her, and the future of an entire civilization depended on his ability to write the right code. The cold, raw data of the beacon seed was 1,000 screaming voices in Aryan Sharma's head. It felt like his consciousness had been forcibly upgraded with an operating system meant for a supercomputer. He stumbled out of the rail yard, the urgency of Ethel's last mental command ringing in his ears. Find the monument of permanence. He desperately needed two things: stability and a terminal to translate the Lyran data. He reached the relative safety of a main road and found a small, dimly lit cyber cafe, a relic of the old internet age, still open. It was the perfect place, dark, anonymous and full of outdated, non-networked computers. Aryan grabbed the most isolated corner terminal. His hands were shaking, but his fingers, guided by the alien logic now infused in his mind, flew across the keyboard. He didn't need to type code, he was writing the output of his thoughts. The beacon seed wasn't a language, it was a pure mathematical function describing a location. His screen filled with geometric coordinates, astronomical alignments and geological fault lines. It was a complex, multi-layered puzzle. Aryan's human programming experience suddenly fused with the Lyran data, creating a bridge between two worlds. He translated the essence. Coordinate set 1. An intersection of ancient riverbeds. Geological permanence. Coordinate set 2. A location near the highest energy output of Earth's magnetic field. Energy permanence. Coordinate set 3. A site with a continuous human presence for over 800 years. Historical permanence. All three coordinates pointed to a single, unmistakable location in the heart of the city, the Gateway of India. The Gateway, Aryan whispered, stunned. A monument built on solid basalt, facing the ancient Arabian Sea trade routes, a beacon of human history. The ultimate monument of permanence. The Lyran beacon needed to be activated right there, in the most public, historically significant spot in the city. A place the DGS would never expect. Aryan quickly copied the final coordinate set onto a tiny encrypted thumb drive. As he stood up, his phone, which he had been using as a silent beacon for the DGS, pinged violently. It was a broadcast message sent to his main communication network. The message was from Deepesh, his friend, whose accidental digital attack had saved them at the rail yard. Deepesh via encrypted chat: dude, huge trouble. That government agency DGS, they're pissed. They've shut down a major sector of the city's cellular network. They are running a deep packet inspection (DPI) protocol on every single civilian device that's still active. They're looking for keywords, specific data patterns, and your unique electromagnetic signature. Stay dark, Sharma. They've put a blanket net on the city. Aryan cursed silently. The directorate wasn't just chasing him, they were isolating the entire city to smoke him out. Every phone call, every text, every data packet was being analyzed. He looked at the thumb drive in his hand. He couldn't risk carrying his phone, it was a digital tracker. He quickly took the phone apart, crushing the SIM card and removing the battery before tossing the pieces into a dumpster. He was now off the grid, carrying the fate of an alien civilization in a tiny flash drive and in his pounding head. Aryan knew he couldn't walk into a highly monitored area like the Gateway of India looking like a fugitive coder. He needed a disguise not just for his clothes but for his demeanor. He used the last of his cash to buy a simple, inexpensive traditional Indian tunic, kurta, from a late-night street vendor. He put on a pair of cheap sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low. He was no longer the sharp, tech-savvy programmer. He was a tourist, 1,000 faces in the crowded city. As he moved through the streets, the beacon seed in his mind was still active. It was making him see the city differently, not as concrete and steel but as energy flows. He could sense the low-frequency hum of surveillance cameras and the high-pitched whine of tracking devices. He realized Ethel hadn't just given him data, she had given him a new Lyran sense of perception. He could feel the DGS net tightening around him, like a giant, invisible spiderweb. He needed to confirm Ethel's status. He found an old, pay-per-use public telephone booth, a relic untouched by the DGS's digital net. He had one number he could trust implicitly, Deepesh's. He dialed the number, his hands shaking again. Deepesh answered on the first ring, his voice tight. Hello? Who is this? This line is dirty, I can't. Deepesh, it's Aryan. Listen to me. Ethel is captured. By the directorate. The woman I brought to the office. She's real. Silence stretched across the analog line. Ethel. The one who said my Angry Cats app was a waste of resources. Deepesh finally whispered, sounding completely sobered. Man, I knew she was legit. Her code signature was insane. Okay, Aryan, I'm listening. What do you need? I've bought you time, but their counterhack is deploying now. I need you to open a secure, untraceable uplink for 3 minutes at the Gateway of India in 90 minutes. Only 3 minutes. It has to look like a massive global data dump, an accident. A total digital supernova. A supernova at the Gateway? What are you doing, dude? I'm activating a beacon. It's the only way to save Ethel. I'm the buffer. The Lyran data is in my head. I'll send you the final coordinate frequency in a moment. You need to create the perfect distraction. A global data dump at a national monument? That's a career-ender, man. And I'm in, Deepesh instantly agreed, his programmer's thrill overriding his common sense. I'll launch it from my remote server farm, through a triple-layer proxy chain. It'll look like the whole world sneezed at once. Send the coordinates now. Be careful, Aryan. Aryan hung up. He had his plan, the Gateway of India, a digital supernova, and the beacon seed. He hailed a rickshaw blending into the night traffic. He knew the DGS was everywhere, their agents scanning every face. But they were looking for a frantic coder. They weren't looking for a silent, calm tourist carrying a deep space secret. As the rickshaw sped toward the coast, Aryan gently touched the side of his head. The beacon seed was quiet now, its data translated into purpose. He wasn't just running anymore. He was executing a Lyran plan on human terms. He was going to save his alien wife. The Gateway of India stood majestic and silent under the late-night sky, its imposing arch a symbol of human permanence and history. The area was eerily quiet, the usual throngs of tourists replaced by the silent, ominous presence of the Directorate of Global Security, DGS. Aryan Sharma, disguised in his simple kurta and sunglasses, approached the monument on foot, the encrypted thumb drive burning a small hole in his pocket. His mind, still processing the sheer volume of the beacon seed data, felt both hyperalert and deeply fatigued. He could perceive the city's electronic pulse, the scattered, low-frequency hum of surveillance devices and the heavy presence of DGS agents attempting to maintain a localized digital lockdown. Aryan located his target zone, a small, inconspicuous maintenance access panel built into the basalt base of the monument, close to the water's edge. This was the exact geological and energy alignment point the Lyran data had specified. He reached the access panel just as a convoy of black, unmarked vehicles pulled up dramatically near the monument steps. His heart hammered against his ribs. Agent Viren stepped out, flanked by a dozen heavily armed security personnel. And between two of them, held tightly, was Ethel. She was draped in the dull, lifeless husk of the cobalt sari, which offered no shimmer now. She looked exhausted and utterly human, but her head was held high, her pale gray eyes fixed on Aryan, who was still 40 meters away, hidden in the shadows. "He is here, Viren. You played into the contract," Ethel projected, her thought voice reaching Aryan's consciousness, weak but clear. "Your final tactical error, emissary," Viren sneered, his voice loud and echoing in the silence. He held a sophisticated Lyran-derived energy scanner aimed at Ethel. "We knew the beacon needed a fixed point. We let the living buffer lead us to it." Viren positioned Ethel directly in the center of the gateway's arch. His men began setting up a series of powerful energy dampeners, complex devices designed to disrupt any Lyran frequency. The 3-minute countdown. Aryan knew he couldn't wait. He had to activate the beacon and the distraction protocol simultaneously. He quickly opened the maintenance panel and plugged his thumb drive into the old, insulated communication port inside. This port, designed for basic analog signaling, was the only clean connection to the Earth's natural energy grid. His fingers flew over the keyboard of the tiny hidden panel, entering the complex Lyran equations he had translated. This was not a physical activation, it was a coded handshake between the beacon seed in his mind and the monument's energy point. T-3 o'clock minutes. At that moment, the entire city's power grid seemed to shudder. A massive wave of pure chaotic digital noise erupted. It wasn't the slow, creeping interference of a virus. It was a sudden, global-scale data dump. Every screen, monitor, and holographic display in the immediate vicinity, including the DGS agents' tactical screens, flashed blindingly white, then went haywire. Deepesh had launched the digital supernova. Viren roared, covering his ears. "He's attacking the network. The distraction. Locate the source. Go, Sharma. The noise is a shield. Finish the upload." Ethel's mental voice urged him. T-130 minutes. Aryan could feel the Lyran code flowing out of his mind through the thumb drive and into the earth beneath the monument. It was the purest form of data exchange, bypassing all DGS technology. Viren recovered quickly. He spotted the small flicker of the maintenance panel and the hunched figure of Aryan. The buffer. He's at the base. Viren pointed his weapon, a non-lethal high-energy pulse gun, at Arian. Stop him. Disable the buffer. The final handshake. As the DGS agents rushed towards him, Arian felt the data reaching its critical transfer point. His head was clearer now, the complex code was almost gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of purpose. He looked up. Ethel was watching him, a small, genuine smile, the first true emotional expression he had ever seen from her, touching her lips. It was a look of pure faith and relief. Thank you, Host Sharma. You achieved the impossible, Ethel's thought voice whispered, tinged with a deep, personal affection. T-10 seconds. Viren reached him first, his face twisted in rage. He slammed the butt of his weapon into Arian's side. Arian cried out, but held onto the port, his finger hovering over the final key. You failed, coder. Viren spat, pointing the pulse gun at Arian's head. The beacon is ours. T-001 seconds. Arian didn't move. He simply pressed the final key. Activate. The Lyran light. The moment the final code was entered, the gateway of India did not explode. Instead, it became the epicenter of an extraordinary silent bloom of energy. From the cracks in the basalt base and the ancient stone, a pure, soft silver blue light erupted. It wasn't harsh, it was warm and encompassing, spreading outward like a massive, inverted dome. The DGS energy dampeners instantly overloaded and melted into smoking puddles. The surveillance equipment shattered. The powerful digital supernova created by Deepesh was instantly absorbed and silenced by the beacon's stabilizing field. In the center of the light, Ethel began to rise. The dull gray sari flared into life, becoming pure, liquid silver. Her silvery blue skin regained its translucent ethereal quality, and her eyes burned with the glorious white-blue light of 1,000 suns. She was no longer exhausted or human. She was the emissary, the vessel, now fully synchronized with Earth's magnetic core. The silver-blue dome of light shielded the entire area, and every DGS agent, including Agent Viren, suddenly crumpled to the ground, unconscious. They were not hurt. Their nervous systems had simply been overloaded by the sheer non-violent force of the Lyran frequency. Ethel floated down, her feet barely touching the ground. She was majestic, radiant, and utterly beautiful. She walked towards Arian, who was still slumped by the maintenance panel, rubbing his bruised side. You are injured, Sharma, Ethel stated, her voice returning to the chime of deep space, but now imbued with warmth. I got hit by a super-secret police chief, Ethel, Arian groaned, trying to stand. Is it done? The primary beacon field is successfully established, Ethel confirmed, touching his cheek with a hand that glowed with gentle power. Earth is now protected and my people have a chance. She paused, looking at the unconscious Agent Viren, then back at Arian. And the Union contract is now permanently validated. Arian's eyes widened. Validated? Wait, what about the 10 years? And the mission termination clause? Ethel's smile widened, truly dazzling now. The mission was the beacon activation. The 10 years were the integration phase. I no longer require the SARI or the secrecy. But Article 1 still stands, Host Sharma. She leaned down, her luminous eyes full of the vastness of space and the warmth of human connection. I am home, Arian Sharma. Your alien wife has arrived, permanently. The silver blue light pulsed one last time, enveloping them both in a silent, beautiful promise. The coder and the emissary were now bound, forever protected by a monument of permanence and the chaos of human love. Arian and Ethel eventually returned to a version of their life, shielded by the permanent, undetectable Lyran beacon field, which also conveniently rendered all DGS surveillance ineffective within a 5-kilometer radius. Agent Viren and the Directorate woke up with no memory of the past 48 hours, convinced that the incident at the rail yard was a colossal, embarrassing server failure. Deepesh became an unsung national hero in the underground tech community, having launched the greatest hack in history, now known only as the Gateway Supernova. Arian Sharma still debugs code, but now he works from home with Ethel, who still struggles with human concepts like small talk and why humans eat vegetables, sitting beside him. Her shimmering sari is often visible, hidden only by a simple throw blanket, and her luminous eyes watch over the city. Their only major point of contention? Ethel insists that spicy red pepper flakes are the most critical terrestrial food item, and she occasionally uses her low-frequency powers to make the coffee machine brew faster. The ordinary coder